Hello, everyone. My name is Misty Arnell, and I am thrilled to welcome you to our fall event for the local reading series at the Hudson Valley Writers Center. We're so happy to have you with us this evening. If this is your first time joining us for a reading, welcome. We hope that you continue to come to our readings, classes, and events, both in person and online. Please check our website or one of our printed calendars on the side table for a complete list of offerings. It's over here. Our next reading will feature an evening of new poetry with Rachel Haydas, Patrick James Arrington, and Walter Encaro on Saturday, October 7th at 5 p.m. in person here at the Hudson Valley Writers Center. I hope you will consider joining us. I would like to thank the board, our teachers, and our students who are the beating heart of this center, and our founder, Margot Taft-Stever. We also want to recognize the foundations and organizations who support us, including the Bydale Foundation, the David G. Taft Foundation, NISCA, and Arts Westchester. I also want to thank my colleagues, Jennifer Franklin, Sophia Bannister, and Christina Papadopoulos for all their hard work. Our first reader tonight will be Heller Levinson. Heller Levinson has published over a dozen books, and his work has appeared in over 100 journals. His publication, Smelling Mary, was nominated for both the Pulitzer Prize and the Griffin Prize. His most recent books are Query Caboodle and Shift Gristle. His poetry book, Lure, won the 2022 Big Other Book Award.
Thank you, Mindy, and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. As you can hear me okay? Does that work? Yeah? You can hear me all right? Okay. Okay, we're gonna start with the most recent book, which is Shift Gristle. And the first poem up is going to be called Valvular Ash, which is going to be the title of my forthcoming book from Black Widow Press this spring. Valvular ash, wind-studded thought wren, wrestles archaic, flips the lurch drive, sudden, sodden of foot, of trough. Then we're going to skip to a poem from a former book. I don't know which one, but it's called Archer. One of my hobbies is bare bow archery. Before the quiver, the dart, the reach to string, hesitancy, this lapse to pure thought, as if the arrow would fling itself. An upcoming poem, which will be in Valvular Ash, is Tarantella Without Forever. Blindside upswing, tipsy roll over, fracture, slash secretion, eject totter. Logic rejects futurity. The overload wearies. Fervid feet fertilize a decoded velocity. I'll do that last line again. Fervid feet fetishize a decoded velocity. Okay, we're going to move over to a poem in here called Trouble Is. A lot of trouble. This is Trouble Is. Trouble is crud-coated, Nash-afflicted, fusillade frenzy, all aboard, steamroll, satanic, shimmy praxis, flummox, fungi, parade, goo-wrapped, gum-bubbled, atrocity-riddled bloat blob, rash, doom-driven, pantic blear, doom-driven panic blear. This funk you can't debunk. Drool, gangrenous, cumulative, abort, contort, cut along the dotted line. Be besot, cranky, ill at sorts. It takes all kinds days like this. Take two, take three, up for grabs. Aquamarine, terracotta, pit stop, downfall, home improvement, leprous idol. There must be some way out of here. Sidle, slip, slide, hyper glide. Blitz, blizzard blink, tincture lost. Where's the boss? Rat, skunk, skittle, ladle, cap atop, thrown a bone. Fancy yourself. Thank you all. Now we're going to move to a little experiment I've never done before. So I hope this goes okay. What I'm going to do in assembling the poems for this reading, I came across what I call, for myself anyway, a revelation packet. I came across 4 poems I thought I would incorporate, and I found them going together and converging so synchronously that I was getting a lot out of it. So what I think I'm going to try and do is pass that transport. In my day, we used to have a word called, we were tripping back in the 60s. We'd go on a trip, often with extra, substances, but we don't need any because we have the poems here. So I'll go through this. So it's 4 poems, and I'll try and explain as we go along. So the first poem is called Call. And what interests me here, and the way I'm going to present it, I'm going to read what I have in the back. This is a notation. Call hinges to Heidegger's what is called thinking. The old word, quote, to call means not so much a command as a letting reach. That therefore, the call has an assonance of helpfulness and complacence, is shown by the fact that the same word in Sanskrit still means something like to invite. So we're going to pay attention to this notion of invitation, of indwell, the word that Hopkins uses, Gerard Hopkins, Manly Hopkins. Call, lure cast, vapor wreath, thirst trowel. Not call as in naming, but as that which is yet to appear. To appear as summons, dream soft, crest ripple, attire pulmonic, levin pour, bell throb titillate, trilling nebulous troughs, latchless, the lariat slings. So this lariat slings, west, you nooses the horse, another kind of transportation. But this is the lariat in this sense I'm using it is to sling out, to bring back, to bring in. So next poem that we're going to go to that somewhat hinges with that one is called Pour. And this is P-O-R-E. So we're talking about the opening, the pour. Okay. The first quote is from Merleau-Ponty. Sorry for throwing all this philosophy at y'all. So the quote is P-O-R-E. We went over that. The quote is, see as thing the intervals between things themselves. So in this pit, in the pour, in the opening, there's a dynamism. The poem will explain this. Oxford English Dictionary. A, opening in the skin or body surface of an animal. B, a minute interstice between particles of matter. C, duct or passage. Orifice de bouche, coagulate, invite, See, the invite right now echoes the call, the Sanskrit, the call. Right away, we see the kind of link going on. Orifice de bouche, coagulate, invite, where unformulation privileges formulation, intrigue trigger, cavernous fibrillate. The in-between brings as the unspoken for, as the emptiness tuning adjacency, antiphonal commingle, tendril titillate, or possibility packed, whole, penetrate or pour, from, space offers a shape or adapt as required. Where in the empty is navigation? How much of empty is navigable? Rutting in ambidextrous roughage, the yet to be slurs. This is what, at the opening and the orifice, this is what hasn't come forth yet, but is appearing. The yet to be slurs, capers amid, pinwheel probe, brew, broth, plate, pixie twirl, loom, extract, bore, into, torque, crank, contort, open, openings, interosculate suffuse, interstitial itch. This is the quote. The spaces between the particles of solid material are just as important to the nature of the soil as are the solids themselves. It is in these pore spaces that air and water circulate, roots grow, and microscopic creatures live. So all this dynamic in the space. Where in the pore is the extractable? Can the extractable be the unidentified, the shadow's marrow? In the throttle, leucite vein crackle roll, pores pepper the palm, onomatopoeia, bumptious, propagate, gristle, shift to the archaeology of wisdom, to the rimrouse of the damp hollow, the over-under turn. Lips pulsate in the sagacity of incompletion, in the sultry call of enormity. And this call, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, is C-A-U-L. It's the membrane in the fetus. It's that kind of supportive. So I'll read that last 4 lines. Lips pulsate in the sagacity of incompletion, in the sultry call of enormity. Now, you heard one of the lines in here was plate, pixie, twirl, loom, extract, bore, into, torque, crank, contort. So there just happens to be a poem called Torque. So I didn't know this when I was writing this. I found this out as I was preparing something to read tonight. So we have Torque. So let's see what Torque has to say, how it fits into this whole movement we're enjoying, hopefully, and exploring. 92. Torque. Advanced ebullience. Crank, amplify, axial bulge. Squeeze through, accelerate, tube, damask, sparrow, birch flea, prong, perpendicular, gravitas, gyrate, tensile, twist, toggle, thrust, spasm, frantic, vibrato, flutter, rudder, butterfly. And then from Torque, this is the highlight here. Now we're going to have the apotheosis. We go to gleam. The way Okay, a little note on Gleam, I think, is one in here. No note on Gleam. But what I want to say is Gleam, it's a shining forth. The way I'm viewing it, it's a kind of mystical apparition, which results from the pour, the openness, the movement, the dynamic, the activities in the openness, and the call, which is the invitation to appear. I mean, this could be the flower budding. This could be a subway door opening and you having a fresh view that you haven't seen before. It could be standing in front of Van Gogh's cypress in the wheat fields. But there's the sense of this glowing aola around the presenting. I have a note here, the succulence of first arrival. Gleam, shimmer, spray, preternatural. Flare, swell up. Aperturial fume. Vent breeze. Appearances, apparatus. Tools of come forth. The letting, persuasive in its outlook, its craft. That's the end of my Revelation quartet. And I'm going to read one more poem, which is the last poem in the book. And I do believe it will tag into this experience I've tried to share with you. And it's the title of the book, Shift Gristle. Of course, it's the gristle, shift gristle, and everything we've just talked about. Okay. Concatenate, velocity, tuck, thwart, compress, sponge, frisson, spring, hammer drill, concoct, press, roll, febrile, lunge, craft, interstitial lodging, where springs flatten, then surge, occurrences gather, elementaling, provision, hopping, compact buoyancy, the art of disrobe, formative cognition, collusive gnash, prospects for another tendency. Thanking you all very much. And we will turn it over to Mindy.
Thank you, Heller. So our second reader is going to be Mary Makofske. I'm so sorry. I practiced it too. Mary's latest books are No Angels, The Gambler's Daughter, The Orchard Street Press, World Enough, and Time, and Traction. Winner of the Richard Snyder Prize. Her poems have appeared in more than 70 journals, including Poetry, Poetry East, American Journal of Poetry, Southern Poetry Review, Cornstalk Review, Mississippi Review, North American Review, Valparaiso Poetry Review, and in 20 anthologies. She has received first prizes in poetry from Atlanta Review, New Millennium Writings Littoral Press Broadside Contest, Lullwater Review, Spoon River Poetry Review, Quiet Diamonds, The Ledge, and Cumberland Poetry Review. Would you like this here, or would you like to hold it? Would you like the microphone in here? Okay.
Thank you, Misty. Okay. Let me get set up here. I usually do these in order in the book, but this time I didn't, so I need to have my list. The first poem is Borders. Drawn in ink or blood, they unspool from history to split mountains and valleys. meander in rivers that twist and turn, dragging their banks to new configurations, adding to, subtracting from this dominion or that. Invisible except when a fence or wall defines them, ramparts that open only through drawbridge or gate, guarded by sirens and guns. Those you can step across are silent. The same weeds grow on either side. Perhaps a sign announces some new territory, but the soil does not change its allegiance, clay or silt, loam or dust. The name of the tree that straddles a border may change from one language to another, but its roots are anchored in the same earth and draw up water that travels without passport or visa. Still, coastal nations cast their nets 3 miles into the ocean's tides and storms, and even the sky is bound with invisible borders dividing yours from mine. Nazrine's story. In the converted barn, we gather to hear Nazrine tell her version of what Iraqis call the collapse. Before, things were bad, very bad, but everyone knew to keep quiet, be patient, awaiting Saddam's collapse. She struggles with words to express her shock and awe, watching her city's buildings, bridges, lives collapse. But also jubilation, faith that the yoke of oppression had lifted, Saddam's statue yanked down, its collapse reverberating through the land. Though soon her brother was taken, tortured, returned only to collapse in a corner, refusing to leave the house again. How to keep teaching her students English after the collapse of hope. As she waited at the bus stop, a car pulled up, a bullet ripped into the man beside her, whose collapse she knew to ignore, staring straight ahead, grateful she was not the one whose life bled out on the pavement. Collapse time to this room, where we are safe but shaken, where someone asks, "What can we do?" And again, the collapse of hope when Nazrine says, "You also are powerless in this collapse. Your government decides what stands, what will collapse." And this next one, rendition has two different meanings, of course. Rendition is a version of something, but also during George Bush's term, we found out that rendition can be an extraordinary rendition in which people are taken to secret sites to be tortured. Rendition. New take on an old song. Jazz singer K.J. Denhert taking help 4 notches down from the manic chase scene to a slow tempo plea. Drummer Ray Brown's combo sapping jaunt from FDR's campaign song, "Happy Days Are Here Again." The Star-Spangled Banner exploding from Jimmy's guitar, an extraordinary rendition, but none so extraordinary as hooded men, hands cuffed behind them, led across wet tarmac to a plane bound for unnamed destinations, dank basements, jails no one could visit, instruments of torture, old as the Middle Ages, new take on an old song. And this one is about, I don't think I have to name this person. It's a well-known person, a public personage. I had to tell my oldest son who it was, but okay. He's not a poetry person. Okay. Bull in a china shop. Who can blame the bull? He's used to open range. When he stamps his hoof, the weak scatter. His bellow splits mountains. He can't help swinging his head to glare at this cage. He can't help the sweep of his lethal horns. Why is he thwarted in his drive to master this crimped space? Even a twinge of fear may surge through his body as he spins, kicks, thrashes, to escape, to shatter what he cannot understand. Who opened the door? Everything here was fragile, precious. And I have a number of sort of public or political poems, but I also have ones that are more sort of the at-home poems or about family. I'll read some of my family poems later. And this one is called As a Bruise Changes Color. A woman can walk into doors only so many times before sympathy turns to doubt. Only so many times till she's blamed for her clumsiness. Only so many times, as if blind, limping back on the crutch of her promises. Only so many times till he learns how to hurt without showing. Only so many times she'll be grateful for that. A woman can walk into doors only so many times till she finds her way out. Marriages. Marriages can shatter like a piñata, spilling nothing sweet. Dissolve like salt in water, leaving a briny taste. Calcify to brittle husks, a hollow rustling. Unravel like a sweater, reverting to crimpled yarn. Even those which hold and shift with time, kaleidoscopic, shine with broken glass. And some family poems. I have 4 grandsons, so I have lots of material for poems. And I was watching my youngest, not my youngest, next to youngest grandson when he was a baby. So that is about this time. And also it relates to something that Heller was talking about too. He was talking about what is thinking, what is, you know, how do we put things into words and so forth? How do we understand things through language? Sometimes we understand things not through language. Speechless. He pushes the bottle away to stare at the milk I swirl and smiles a secret, as if he's considering the properties of liquids. Though he knows the taste of his mother's milk, he's seen it only in droplets, never in such abundance. And how did it come to be here? He presses a finger against numbers that measure ounces, then turns to nuzzle my old breast hidden beneath sweaters, looks back at the bottle, and kisses my hand. As he totters across the lawn, how does he store the brown leaf he crumbles, not knowing its name? Does he know it as one of those he gazed at when, gold as canaries, they shivered above his head in October wind? What is thinking without words? Enchantment, rapture. Staring at ripples in the lake, so small an acolyte of the world, his silence praises the God with no name. And then sometimes, okay, I've been writing poetry for decades, but sometimes I get weary of it. So this also has a grandson in it, though. To build. I'm tired of juggling words, placing and replacing them, shuffling them like a deck of a million cards. I am tired of chasing their minnow forms through shallows, nailing them to a page where they slide off like melting wax. I want to wet a lump of clay, stroke its smoothness, turn the potter's wheel to mold a shape, caress it, let it caress my hands until a bowl rises, vessel for water, plant, soup, or light. I want smooth pine, nails, a hammer. I want to measure, cut, build a shape with angles, roof. A house where some winged creature can fluff its feathers, sit on speckled eggs, wait for the tap, tap, the fine cracks. Think of what I have made with my body, 2 sons, and through them what I helped to build, 2 grandsons. One who now sits in my lap and points to letters in a book, then sings the alphabet. No escaping language. Or music. Okay. This one is catbird. We do have catbirds in our yard. Catbird swings through his repertoire. Cardinal, robin, red-winged blackbird, jay, others I don't recognize. But why should I assume his songs are true? Maybe this cat is improvising, riffing on what he thinks can be improved or given a new twist, or even inventing from scratch some tunes he hopes will be added to the standards. Though our strawberries are netted, our blueberries caged against him, he's irrepressible. Dominating the stage of this bright June morning, he throws his cat imitation into the mix. It's as if he's seen Monk break from tunes to talk to himself, seen Miles turn his back on the audience. Who needs them? Let the celebrated nightingale trill its same old song. This bird, this jazz cat impresario of morning, lays down a set no one can beat. Love our catbird. This one was based on a prompt, actually, which was write something based on the group names for birds. You know, a murder of crows, a parliament of owls. And what came out of it was actually a story. The owls consider their kind. A parliament of owls meets by night in a hemlock at forest's edge. They mull a dissimulation of birds, how congregations of plovers bow to sand and surf, a cast of hawks mounts a bloody play. They note the descent of woodpeckers backing down bark in pursuit of beetles, a siege of herons occupying the nearby swamp. And though larks rise in exultations, ravens' unkindness, crows' murderous hearts, even the deceit of lapwings concern them. The watch of nightingales protects nothing. A wisp of snipes could bring everything down. And the title poem of this book, No Angels, the poem comes from trying to deal with hearing about the killing of Michael Brown by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. And there was a quote in the New York Times, "Michael Brown was no angel." And I thought, okay, who is? This is a 13-page poem, so I cannot read the poem in its entirety, but I will read a couple of sections from it. And Darren Wilson was the officer. No angel hovers over the scene draped in yellow tape, where Mike Brown lay for hours in his own blood. No angel hovers over Darren Wilson, staring at the dashboard of the squad car, wondering if the blood on his hands belongs to him or the man he shot. Some believe there was once an angel who chafed at authority, who burned to remake humans in his image, to lead them out of innocence. There were no angels on the streets of Ferguson. None in the homes, none with assault guns, none sheathed in armor, in great metal beetles, none beneath helmets with black face guards, none flinging rocks or shattering windows, none with their hands raised, none behind cameras whirring to catch it all, none watching it on their screens. And this is another section later in the poem. Wolves know by instinct what to do, how when the fight gets nasty, one turns on his back, exposes his throat and belly to ask for mercy the dominant wolf will grant. The question for men becomes, who is dominant? The crowds want answers. Time passing could be so much to consider, could be stalling. One grand juror says, my concern is that everybody is saying, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, make a decision, hurry up and get this done, hurry up and get that done. They are taking their time, as if volumes of testimony proved deliberation. And what stunned me about the whole incident was how quickly it happened. So I'm going to end with just this one little section near the end of the poem. This is the police officer speaking. Wilson thought, if I could buy 30 seconds of time, 30 seconds of time, what does it cost? This one life you have, how will you spend it? Finger locked on the trigger, a mouth full of nettles, your child a burden to carry, her cry a hook in your flesh? Will dawn be a hammer striking your skull? How will you spend the nights without lifting your eyes to the moon that changes without changing? Will you love how easily blood flows from the broken body, or press your ear to its thrumming, safe within flesh? This one life you have may not be the only one, but it is the only one you can be sure of. Will you spend it on a nightmare or even a dream? Or will you lower your weapons to see the web tremble? Close your eyes and let the blind wind read you. And I try to always read this last poem at my readings because unfortunately it's still so relevant. It's actually from my other book, Traction. But it seems to me it's a very important poem. And what I'm doing is it's called Out of Hate's Country. And what I do with it is I am trying to look at hate as an actual country from which one can emigrate. Her sons grow to men who face all faces with undamaged eyes. Wait for each soul to speak its name. They don't know what an old country she's from, how she must translate in her head the grace that rolls from their tongues. The past spins a powerful hex. She hushes pride, spits over her shoulder for luck. As much as what she's said or done, her silence has kept them safe. Some moonless night, she will rip out the words of hate sewn into her coat and bury them deep where all bones embrace. Thank you.
So we will go ahead and start our Q&A. Anyone who is on Zoom, if you have a question, go ahead and put it right in the chat for me so that we can have the poets answer the questions. We're just going to do a little readjusting so everyone's got some room. All right. So the first question that I have is just kind of what inspired you to start the books that you brought today. I know you both have a couple of books, so you can speak on any of them or the one that you read from the most. But what made you write this book in particular? Why the now? Why today? Why did it start?
Well, the book No Angels it just came out this summer. And it came from many different things. I had written a lot of different poems and I wanted to bring them together in one book. Then it's not a singular theme, as you can see. But it was just some of my favorite poems that I wanted to put in a book. And so I needed to arrange them. And so I did that. The other book I brought is Traction because that's another book I'm really, really proud of. It won the Richard Snyder Prize from Ashland Poetry Press. I have another chapbook called The Gambler's Daughter, and that one I got because it was actually selected because I won a contest for a single poem, and I was invited to send in a chapbook, and I got that poem that book that way. So it's been different ways that I have books, but this one because it's new, I guess it just seems like it's the one I really want to put out there and promote.
The question is, what starts the book? Shift Gristle. This one I was reading from today. Well, the poems I kind of ever recurring. So Shift Gristle was the title of this book because that's the title that came to me. I like the term. And then within the book, of course, I explore it sometimes. The book behind me, Just Saying, that is a 70-page plus homage to the jazz musician John Coltrane. And so just saying, you know. And in that book, we explored saying. What does it mean to say? And how does it get done? And so that's an exploration there. Now, you didn't ask for too much of a discussion, but it actually leads into something, so I can continue. Now, I have a trilogy, Lure. I have two books. I was trying to think which came first. Oh, Seep, Lurk, and Lure. Lure just won the tremendous Big Other Award 2 days ago. So Seep, Lurk, and Lure started with me exploring the term seep. And this is actually very interesting because it's a large part of what I do. And that is paying attention to the ecology of the language. So when I explore a book like Seep and I deal with a term like that, we have over 50, 60 poems addressing the term seep, so that by the time you finish, if you dare to read all 50 or even 20 of them, you come out with a new feeling for seep. It becomes like a neighbor. It becomes an intimate. So it's like when you name a cardinal, or you people do birding, you name the birds, but by virtue of applying a name, there's some magic in it that you feel, or does bring you closer to that living being. And that's how I view language. So seep, lurk, lure are explored, and they take on an organismic vivacity, I hope. And they are no longer the kind of stifled, static presence in a lexicon, but something moving, dynamic, and growth oriented.
Thank you. So the next question I have is about your writing routines. Sounds like both of you have been writing for quite a while, and I'm curious about if that routine has changed over time, if you find yourself writing every day at one specific desk at one time, or if there have been times where the writing's not really coming and you take a bit of a break, or what does that look like for you?
Well, I used to be more disciplined about writing almost every day, but I don't do it now. I'm involved in so many other different activities, but those activities often spark something that makes me want to write a poem. And so basically I write when I feel the urge to do it, but that's fairly often. And the other thing is that after having been writing for so many years, I have so many unfinished poems. So anytime I'm thinking, well, what should I do? Well, I can sit down and take one of my unfinished poems and work on it. So that basically keeps me busy. And I do still have a lot of poems that have been published that haven't been in books. And as I say, I would like to finish some of my unfinished poems.
And you don't take this the wrong way. I have an interview coming up Sunday, and I requested he not ask me two things. Don't ask me why I started writing, and don't ask me what my practice is. But having said that, and the reason I say that is because there's no routine. I breathe, I write. As Saint, I forgot the poet's name, the French poet Saint. He said on his doorknob was quiet. At nighttime, he'd go quiet poet working. So when you sleep, you work. I mean, it's a poet is a 24-hour, an artist is a 24-hour gig. So that's why I evade the question. But thanks for asking.
I still think that was a good answer, for the record. It looks like we do have one question that's in the chat, specifically for Mary. It says, Mary, thank you. I always enjoy your family poems. You seem more political tonight. Is that because of our times, or have you always written political poems?
I think I've always tended to write some political poems, but I'm definitely doing it more lately. But I still write the family poems. And the thing is, I think they're all related. I mean, I really do think they're all related because when you're talking about families, you're talking often about, well, what's happening to families in, another country, for example, in Iraq or whatever. And so I don't really see a big difference in those. But I am drawn to both of those. And also to some sort of experiments with language, like the like the owl poem. I thought, well, that's not what I normally write. But it was fun. So
Mary, are there any parallels? You talk about the grandchildren. I know you garden. Any parallels between raising grandchildren and raising gardens, vegetables?
do you remember that there was a play on Broadway and there was a song in it, plant a garden, get a garden? And it was wonderful. It was if you plant vegetables, you get plant a cabbage, get a cabbage. Maybe you'll get two, but with children, you don't know. So I don't know that I see a real close parallel between those things, although there's a lot of nurturing that goes on with both. And there's a lot of experimenting and there's a lot of failures, and so I think that in both cases that happens.
Thank you. Heller, I have a question specifically for you. And when you were reading your poetry, there was a lot of rhythm that felt like it came through very clearly and almost like you had some movement in your body. And I'm just curious if you could tell us a little bit about kind of like your whole body experience, both when writing poetry and when publicly reading it. What does that kind of feel like when you're taking words from your head and putting it out into the world?
Very good question, Mindy. One way of answering that question is I get a little bit irked when people say I'm a good performer, because the reason I don't feel I'm performing the poems. I feel the words are performing. It's just coming through me. So, and you said the words coming in the head, as I'm somewhat known for something called hinge poetics, and that one of the basic points, tenets of hinge is that the words are live, they're animistic, as I was explaining before, that they're like wildlife. So to me, I guess that's what's happening. The words are breathing, coming, making me move, and another point, I'll tell some secrets since you mentioned it. When in terms of the music, I find this in today's a lot of the music is lost in a lot of poetry being written today. If you go back to Gerard Manley Hopkins or even Shakespeare or Hart Crane, one of the ways that often the titles come is I hear them. Or recently I have a line called Le Rutilant. Rutilant is a kind of luminescence, and I was looking for that term and listen to Le Rutilant. So the words move with each other. There's an alchemy to the language. So I often will hear the word before I know what word I'm going to use. So that's part of the musical. So to me, the music and the poetry, it's all in kind of an equivalent exfoliation.
Thank you. And one question that I have to ask, just because it's the question you have to ask for anyone else who is a writer out there, or for myself as a writer, what is one piece of advice you would give to a fellow writer on anything writing, publishing related?
Read. I mean, I think there's no substitute for being familiar with many, many different kinds of poetry and immersing yourself in them. That's basically what I would say.
My advice would be to take good care of your teeth.
Keep that one in mind. I haven't heard that answer before. Yeah, I think that's really the summary of my questions. Thank you both for being here and for answering questions. If you have anything else you'd like to add, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, we'll probably close out for the night.
Thanks.
Just thank you very much. Okay, this is a lovely place. So nice to be here.
What if anybody out there? This place is gorgeous. just to be here. So thank you for inviting both of us. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining. Have a good rest of your night.